One of my favorite things about Sean Baker's movies is the way he uses this type of cut. And what I love even more is that he's been using it for seemingly his entire career. Dum, dum, dum. No. Dum, dum, dum.
Stupid.
The savvy film nerds amongst us might quickly let us know that this is a jump cut, a type of edit that breaks the continuity of a single sequential shot into two parts, with the piece of footage removed to create the effect of jumping in time while the camera remains in the same spot. In narrative film, one of the most famous uses of this type of cut was Jean-Luc Godard's film Breathless. The camera rests on the back of Patricia's head while they jump cut in between each line delivered by Jean-Paul Belmondo. The effect is a little comedic.
J'aime une fille qui a une très jolie nuque, de très jolis seins, une très jolie voix.
But that previous definition isn't always rigid. For example, in It's a Wonderful Life, this jump cut here clearly moves from one camera position to another, the camera now being a little bit closer to the actors in the second shot. But still, since it maintains the same relative perspective, the jump in time is still maintained. But back to Breathless, Godard and his French contemporaries, they weren't using the jump cut to communicate continuous storytelling, like how they were in It's a Wonderful Life and other Hollywood productions, where the film's reality is perfectly maintained. The New Wave directors were specifically using the jump cut to break continuity and achieve the opposite of escapism. They wanted the viewer to be aware that they were watching a film. They were bending, breaking, and reshaping the tools of narrative cinema and showing audiences something that they had never seen before. Jump cutting was just one of the tools they used to achieve that. While maybe the biggest story of Anora's historic Oscar night was the Best Picture win, the Best Director win, and Mikey Madison winning Best Actress, what really stood out to me was Sean Baker taking home the award for Best Editing. Of course, he's edited all of his films, but I think of him as a writer-director first. The editing of all of his films, like I just mentioned, are rooted in techniques that historically break the reality of a film's story. And just look at the last 10 years of the best editing winners. They mostly reward films that go through the most trouble and greatest difficulty in maintaining that film's escapism. As the great Thomas Flight puts it,
like so much of the rest of the Oscars, it can sometimes feel like the awards go to most acting and not necessarily best acting.
And for the record, I love those films. Oppenheimer, Everything Everywhere All at Once were two of my favorite movies to come out in the last 5 years. And they're both doing really incredible things in the editing room, being able to maintain such complicated timelines and universe jumping stories and still feeling continuous and real to the audience. But you also can't deny that those two films also feel like the movies with the most editing. Sean Baker, on the other hand, specifically edits his films to be the exact opposite. He's frequently mentioned in interviews that he always tries to keep the editing as bare minimum as possible, stating, "I look to use as few edits in a scene as possible. How can I get my point across and have the scene make sense with as few edits as possible?" It's something that we're all getting away from too much in cinema. We feel like if there's not a cut every 3 seconds, something is wrong. And I don't like that way of thinking. So if Sean Baker's approach sort of goes against the traditional status quo of what Hollywood rewards for the best editing Oscar, that must mean his editing in Anora must have been really good, right? So let's take a look again at some of his jump cutting. What I find interesting is that most instances of this type of cut occur within the first 40 minutes of the movie. The portion I like to call the fairy tale.
Cinderella. Yes, fucking Cinderella. You know me so fucking well, babe.
It follows Anora, who meets a random, mystery Russian boy who can bring her out of poverty and live the life that she thinks that she wants. This part of the film is rife with excess and fun, and the filmmaking and editing follow suit. The cuts jump, and they're really fast. They smash together huge gaps in time and space, sometimes traveling across the entire country in a matter of seconds. Everything happens so quickly and with such a sense of amazement that we hardly have any time to process the potential consequences of what's going on. Despite using the same techniques that the French New Wave artists used to remove the viewer from the film's reality, Baker uses them to firmly plant the audience into Anora's shoes. And that's why the filmmaking and editing techniques in this section of the film are actually closer to docu-style than anything else. Documentary filmmaking, which of course also uses non-continuous forms of editing to draw the viewer closer into its reality. Like I mentioned in my previous video, a documentary that closely follows its subject going through a moment in their life can be significantly more intimate and real, as opposed to other styles of documentary like interview interview or talking heads or historical and archival. While following a subject, you might jump cut between the long takes to use the best moments, or quickly hop between location and location as the subject moves about their business. And that's exactly what's happening in Anora. Anora, the film, uses this docu-style camera and editing to further enhance the reality of Anora, the character's lived experience. The jumps in time and space draw us closer to the character and the story because they let us feel the same awestruck wonder that Anora feels as all of her wildest dreams come true. But all of this comes to a screeching halt in the next portion, which I'll call the missing slipper, to continue the Cinderella metaphor, or the missing Vanya, to be more accurate to the plot of the film. While time and space were previously very thin and malleable, the beginning of this section is marked by an intense feeling of presentness, of being frozen. The cuts don't jump us forward in time or across any great distances. They're continuous and show us every detail of the intense situation unfolding in real time. In fact, the cuts here start happening a lot less frequently altogether. Shots linger a lot more than they used to, and actions are played out in their entirety. And throughout this long, one individual scene, which accounts for roughly half of the entire second section of the film, we have an immediate sense of contrast between the jumping, directionless, previous style of editing and the current grounded, moment-by-moment style of the second. The storytelling effectiveness of Vanya abandoning Anora is deeply felt because of this palpable difference in editing rhythm. It forces us to sit in this long, drawn-out moment. I mean, just look at how much time we spend with her here in this one scene versus the amount of screen time we spent with her over the course of an entire week with Vanya. In this one scene, there are a few number of total cuts. In the previous section, there were just way too many to count. But while the rhythm changes, we're still locked into Anora's perspective and her lived experience. The docu-style editing is still at play, but it's telling a different part of the story, and therefore needs a different approach, not of excess fun, but of frozen despair. It's a lot easier for an audience to empathize with the characters' anxiety or bad feelings when a film's editing puts us directly into their shoes, experiencing everything in real time. Here's Baker explaining his documentary-influenced style of shooting and editing. In the way we shoot our films, there are sometimes set pieces that rely heavily on docu-techniques. Sometimes that line between a docu-style and drama is completely blurred. In Anora, the crawl through Brighton Beach in search of Ivan is pretty hybrid. You're putting actors in real situations with real locals, and sometimes the locals don't even know we're filming because we're shooting candid camera style. It mixes our fiction with the real world. When it comes to a scene like that, you're capturing it like a documentary, and you have to approach those scenes as a documentarian would in the edit. The success of it lies in how a series of random shots capturing this world are cut together. The only other film that won the Oscar in the last 10 years with a similar approach to Anora was The Sound of Metal, which was actually made by a documentary filmmaker and editor. I really appreciated that film and its recognition, but those Oscars took place at the height of the COVID pandemic, and the movies released that year were notoriously not up to the same Hollywood standards. This past year, I really thought Conclave would be coming home with the award, because it's much more traditionally good and sharp. It seemed like the type of editing that a Hollywood editor would appreciate as good editing. While Conclave's editing is polished, clean, and agreeably stylized, I don't think anyone would be walking away from that movie thinking that it was meaningfully, or perhaps the main driving force behind the story's effectiveness. It isn't distracting, and it's doing the job that it was asked to do, which is the kind of editing that most movies need. But what's different about Anora is that the editing of the film, more specifically the pace set by the editing, is fundamental to the storytelling of our titular character's arc. Which brings me to the third and final section of the movie, the storybook ending. While the first section jumps and moves quickly, and the second section is grounded in these drawn-out moments, they're both deeply rooted in that docu-style of editing. They share the same cinematic language, so to speak. However, once Vanya's parents are introduced, and the realization that things aren't going to end the way that Anora would hope they would finally sets in, there's a noticeable shift in the approach, one which feels a lot more aligned to the traditional Hollywood continuity style of editing than the two other previous modes. This section is much more comfortable cutting to reaction shots, utilizing shot reverse shot, and maintaining a traditional flow of time, which skips over dead space but doesn't move at a cheetah's pace either. Since the excitement and dreadfulness of the main plot is over, the editing almost sheds its skin and emerges in a much more comfortable and approachable traditional mode. After the different highs and lows, it's time for the film to conclude itself in a way that's easiest for us audience members to understand, to bring us back into the reality of film and re-engage us in that verisimilitude, which I realize I should define as experiencing a film's reality as reality. By the end of the movie, Anora isn't the same person. Though slightly untraditional, her character's arc is effectively communicated to us through these changes in the film's editing. She starts off real high, crashes down, and then kind of slowly tapers out. And the edit, being the captain of the film's storytelling, matches that same progression felt by the character, Anora. And for a film named after the titular character, that's all you can really ask for. It's easy to think of editing as something that's visible, something you only notice when it's flashy or when it breaks. But good editing shouldn't be about most editing, and it shouldn't be about a specific style either, whether it be docu-style or a hyper-stylized thing. It should just be about how can it most effectively communicate and aid the storytelling. And that's what Anora accomplishes. Sean Baker reminds us that editing itself is the movie's pulse. It doesn't stick to one approach, but is constantly changing and adapting its techniques based off what our central character is feeling. And it communicates those feelings to the audience in an attempt to make them feel the same way. It's not about keeping the movie moving, but it's about controlling how we feel it move. So if you're wondering how you should approach the edit of your film, you really just have to consider your story and how you want it to feel. It isn't always about continuity, whether it's space and time, but it also isn't always about feeling as real as possible either. The best choices you can make are simply the ones that tell your story as clearly as possible. That's why Anora feels so alive, because it isn't about showing off. It's about showing us what it feels like to be heard. And that's not just good editing.
Ooh, it's hot. Oh, it's like 85 degrees.
It's probably hotter in this room. But anyway, that's a wrap on Anora. I know I'm a little bit late to the game. Listen anymore. I'm not going to say my real. Listen anymore. The Oscars were 2 months ago. Why are you only uploading your Anora video now? Well, it's because the Blu-ray only came out 5 days ago, or I guess 2 weeks ago now. But hey, better late than never, right? Anora video. What did you think of this movie? Did you watch it? I really liked it. I saw it, I think, only 3 times in the movie theaters. And each time I liked it more and more, and each time I was like actually able to like pick up on what was going on with the filmmaking and not just being engrossed and enveloped by the story. Sean Baker's like one of my favorite filmmakers. You know, I saw Red Rocket when it came out back in the day. Red Rocket was the first Sean Baker movie I saw, and I was like, yo, I gotta watch every other thing that this guy has ever made. Yeah, so I think over the next few weeks, I'm gonna be making more videos about like just my favorite directors. So I'm gonna do a Sean Baker video. That's this one, in case you couldn't tell. No, I'm gonna do a Sean Baker video. Next week, I think I'm gonna do a video on Wes Anderson, because did you know that he has a movie coming out in 2 weeks? I feel like nobody cares, which is kind of weird, right? Is everyone getting sick of Wes Anderson? So that's kind of the subject of that video. I don't know what else I should do. Man, I'm having a lot of fun making these videos. Like, I'm constantly thinking about YouTube throughout my day while I'm doing other work. Like other stuff I want to do. Like, I don't know, I think about what I want to do with the channel a lot. Let me know if like you actually care about this channel, right? Or if you're just like watching it because like, I don't know. Yeah, let me know if you actually care about this channel. That would be awesome, because whenever you comment, it makes my day. And I smile. Yeah. So yeah, I've been thinking a lot about what I want to do. Still thinking about it. But man, 6 months from now, like, who knows what I'll be doing, right? So yeah. Anyway, if you're still here, I love you. Thanks for sticking around. I gotta take off this goddamn sport coat because it's hot as hell. Subscribe.